Fly out, Grandma. We want you here for Thanksgiving. That's what my son Matthew said when he called me 3 weeks before the holiday, his voice warm and convincing. It wouldn't be the same without you, Mom. Judith's been asking about you, and the kids are so excited to see their grandmother. So I booked the flight from Phoenix to Boston, spent my Social Security check on plane tickets, bought new clothes, wrapped presents with trembling hands that were shaking more from excitement than age. I dressed warmly that November morning, my heart full of hope as I boarded that plane, thinking finally, my son wanted me to be part of his family's life. But when I landed at Logan Airport with my small suitcase and bag of carefully chosen gifts, no one was there. No one came. And when I checked my phone after 3 hours of waiting, I didn't find missed calls or apologetic texts. Instead, I found a family photo already posted on social media. My son, his wife Judith, and their 2 children gathered around a beautiful Thanksgiving table, smiling and grateful, without me. I hadn't been forgotten. I had been deliberately excluded. So I walked out of that airport, found a little diner called Murphy's, and bought myself a slice of apple pie. And while I sat there eating it alone, I made some decisions that would change everything. My name is Betty Richardson, and at 74 years old, I thought I understood the limits of family cruelty. I was wrong. What my son Matthew and his wife Judith did to me that Thanksgiving wasn't just thoughtless or selfish, it was a calculated act of emotional violence designed to teach me my place in their lives, which was nowhere. But what they didn't know was that their grandmother wasn't some helpless old woman they could manipulate and discard. I was someone who had survived a war, raised 4 children as a widow, built a business from nothing, and accumulated enough wealth and wisdom to destroy their comfortable little world if they pushed me too far. And that Thanksgiving, they pushed me exactly far enough. The invitation itself should have been my first warning sign. Matthew hadn't called me in 4 months before that conversation, and the last time we'd spoken, it had been brief and dismissive. I had called to tell him about my latest doctor's appointment. Nothing serious, just routine tests that had come back fine. And he'd cut me off mid-sentence. Mom, I'm really busy right now. Can we talk about this later? Matthew, it'll just take a minute. Mom, I said later. I've got a client call in 5 minutes and Judith needs me to help with dinner. We'll catch up soon, okay? That soon never came. 4 months of silence, broken only by the perfunctory birthday card he sent in September. Store-bought, with his signature and nothing else. No personal message, no phone call, no acknowledgement that his mother had turned 74 and might appreciate hearing from her only remaining son. But then came that call 3 weeks before Thanksgiving, and suddenly Matthew was warm and chatty and full of family sentiment. Mom, I know we haven't talked in a while, but Judith and I were just discussing Thanksgiving plans, and we both agree that it wouldn't be the same without you here. I was so starved for connection with my son that I ignored every red flag. I ignored the fact that this sudden invitation came out of nowhere. I ignored the fact that Judith, who had never shown any particular affection for me, was supposedly the one asking about me. I ignored my own instincts, which were telling me that something about this didn't feel right. Oh, Matthew, that sounds wonderful. Are you sure it wouldn't be too much trouble? No trouble at all, Mom. We're having it at our house this year. Judith's doing the cooking, and the kids are old enough now to really appreciate having their grandmother there. Tommy's 8 and Sarah's 10, and they've been asking about you. That was another lie, as I would later discover. Tommy and Sarah barely knew me because Matthew and Judith had made sure of that over the years. They lived in Boston, I lived in Phoenix, and the rare visits between us had been carefully controlled and limited. But in that moment, hearing that my grandchildren wanted to see me, I felt my heart soar. I'd love to come, sweetheart. Should I fly in Wednesday and fly back Friday? Actually, why don't you come Tuesday and stay through the weekend? Give us more time to catch up. I'll pick you up at the airport. Just text me your flight details when you get them booked. I hung up that phone feeling happier than I had in months. My son wanted me there for Thanksgiving. My daughter-in-law was asking about me. My grandchildren were excited to see me. Finally, after years of feeling like an afterthought in my own family, I was going to be included in something important. I should have known better. At 74, after all I'd been through in my life, I should have recognized manipulation when I heard it. But love makes you stupid sometimes, and I loved my son more than my own common sense. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. I went shopping for new clothes, wanting to look my best for the family gathering. I bought a navy blue dress with tiny white flowers, comfortable shoes that would be good for playing with the children, and a warm cardigan in case the house was chilly. I spent more money than I could afford, but it felt worth it to look nice for my family. I also went shopping for gifts. For Tommy, I bought a set of science experiment kits that the store clerk assured me were perfect for curious 8-year-olds. For Sarah, I found a beautiful journal with a unicorn cover and matching gel pens. For Matthew, I bought a cashmere scarf I'd seen him admiring in a catalog months earlier. For Judith, I chose an expensive bottle of vanilla extract that I knew she used for baking, along with a cookbook from a famous pastry chef. I wrapped each gift carefully, using paper I'd been saving for special occasions. I wrote thoughtful cards for each family member, telling them how much I loved them and how grateful I was to be included in their Thanksgiving celebration. The flight was booked for Tuesday afternoon, arriving in Boston at 6:30 p.m. I texted Matthew my flight information as soon as I had the confirmation, and he responded immediately. "Got it. Can't wait to see you, Mom. Safe travels."
That Tuesday morning, I woke up early and spent extra time getting ready. I did my hair, put on makeup, and dressed in the new navy dress and cardigan. I checked my small suitcase 3 times to make sure I had everything: the gifts, my medications, enough clothes for 5 days, a photo album I put together of family memories to share with the grandchildren. At the airport, I was practically vibrating with excitement. I called my neighbor, Mrs. Hernandez, to let her know I was leaving for Boston. "Oh, Betty, that's wonderful," she said. "I'm so happy your son invited you for the holiday. You've been so lonely since Harold passed." Harold was my late husband, who had died 8 years earlier. Mrs. Hernandez was right. I had been lonely. Living alone in Phoenix, far from family, with no real community or support system. This invitation felt like a lifeline, a chance to reconnect with the people who mattered most to me. The flight was smooth, and I spent most of it reading a romance novel and imagining the wonderful weekend ahead. I pictured helping Judith in the kitchen, playing games with the children, having long conversations with Matthew about his work and his life. I imagined feeling useful and wanted and loved. I should have imagined something else entirely. When the plane landed at Logan Airport, I was one of the first passengers off. I gathered my suitcase and bag of gifts and made my way to the baggage claim area where Matthew had told me to wait. It was 7:45 p.m., 15 minutes after the scheduled arrival time, but I knew flights could be delayed, and traffic in Boston was always unpredictable. At 7 o'clock, I started looking around more actively, wondering if I'd misunderstood where we were supposed to meet. I checked my phone, no messages. At 7:15, I called Matthew's cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. "Hi, sweetheart. It's Mom. I'm here at baggage claim like we discussed. Just wondering if you're running late or if I should wait somewhere else. Call me back when you get this." At 7:30, I tried calling again. Straight to voicemail again. By 8 o'clock, I was starting to feel the first flutter of real worry. Maybe something had happened. A car accident, a family emergency, something that had prevented Matthew from picking me up. I called Judith's cell phone, which I rarely used but had saved in my contacts years earlier. Her phone also went straight to voicemail. I sat down on a bench near the baggage claim carousel, my suitcase at my feet and my bag of gifts clutched in my lap. Around me, other passengers were being greeted by their families, hugged and kissed and whisked away to warm cars and Thanksgiving preparations. I watched an elderly man about my age get swept up in the arms of what looked like his entire extended family, children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, all talking at once, all thrilled to see him. That's what I had been expecting. That's what Matthew's warm invitation had led me to believe would be waiting for me. At 8:30, I tried both phones again. Still nothing. At 9 o'clock, I called the house phone, thinking maybe there was some problem with their cell service. The answering machine picked up after 4 rings. "Hi, you've reached the Morrison family. We can't come to the phone right now, but please leave a message and we'll get back to you." "Matthew, Judith, it's Betty. I'm still at the airport waiting for someone to pick me up. I'm starting to get worried that something has happened. Please call me as soon as you get this message." At 9:30, I started to face the possibility that something was very wrong. Not in the sense of an emergency or accident, but wrong in the sense that I had been set up somehow. But that thought was so painful, so incomprehensible, that I pushed it away. There had to be an explanation. There had to be a reason my son would leave his elderly mother stranded at an airport. At 10 p.m., 3.5 hours after I'd landed, I finally checked my phone for something other than missed calls and voicemails. I opened Facebook, thinking maybe one of them had posted something that would explain what was happening. What I found instead was a photo that destroyed my heart and changed my life forever. It was posted on Judith's Facebook page, time-stamped 8:47 p.m., right around the time I was calling their house phone. The photo showed my son, my daughter-in-law, and my 2 grandchildren gathered around a beautiful dining room table set for 4. The table was covered with a gorgeous Thanksgiving spread, turkey, stuffing, cranberry sauce, multiple side dishes, and what looked like homemade pies for dessert. Everyone in the photo was smiling. They looked happy, relaxed, grateful. The caption read, "So thankful for our little family tonight. Early Thanksgiving celebration with just the 4 of us. Sometimes the most special moments are the intimate ones." I stared at that photo for a long time. Sitting on that bench in Logan Airport with my suitcase and my bag of carefully wrapped gifts, trying to process what I was seeing. They were home. They had been home all evening, having Thanksgiving dinner while I sat in the airport waiting for someone to pick me up. They weren't in an accident. They weren't dealing with an emergency. They were celebrating the holiday without me, exactly as they had planned to do all along. The invitation was fake. The warm words about wanting me there, about it not being the same without me, about the children asking for their grandmother, all of it had been lies designed to get me to waste my money and my hope on a trip that was never meant to happen. I don't know how long I sat there staring at that photo. It could have been 5 minutes or 50. Time seemed to stop as my brain tried to process the magnitude of what my own child had done to me.
Finally, a security guard approached me. "Ma'am, are you all right? You've been sitting here for quite a while." "I'm fine," I lied, though clearly I wasn't. "Just waiting for my ride. The airport's going to start limiting access to ticketed passengers only pretty soon. Is there someone you can call?" That's when it really hit me. There was no one I could call. I was 3,000 miles from home, with nowhere to go and no one who cared that I was there. My son had deliberately stranded me in a city where I knew no one, on a holiday when everything would be closed, as some kind of cruel joke or punishment for some offense I didn't even understand. "I'll figure something out," I told the security guard, gathering my suitcase and gifts. I walked out of Logan Airport into the cold November night, pulling my cardigan tighter around my shoulders. I had about $300 in cash, a credit card, and no plan whatsoever. I could get a hotel room for the night and fly home in the morning, cutting my losses and trying to forget this had ever happened. But as I stood there, on the sidewalk outside the airport, looking at the distant lights of downtown Boston, I realized something important. I was done being the victim in this story. For years, maybe decades, I had been accepting crumbs from my son and his family, brief phone calls when they needed something, perfunctory holiday cards, visits that were carefully controlled and limited. I had been so grateful for any attention at all that I hadn't noticed how little respect they actually had for me. But this wasn't just disrespect. This was cruelty. This was a deliberate act of emotional violence designed to humiliate me and put me in my place. And my place, apparently, was nowhere at all. I took out my phone and called a taxi. When the driver arrived, I asked him to take me to a nearby hotel. Any particular one, lady? Somewhere clean and safe, not too expensive. He drove me to a Holiday Inn about 15 minutes from the airport. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm, and the desk clerk was kind when I explained that I needed a room for several nights. "Visiting family for the holiday?" she asked as she processed my credit card. "Something like that," I said. My room was small but comfortable. I set my suitcase on the bed and placed the bag of gifts on the desk, looking at them for a moment before turning away. All that careful shopping, all that thoughtful wrapping, all that love and hope and excitement, wasted on people who had never wanted any of it. I called room service and ordered a bowl of soup and a pot of tea. While I waited for it to arrive, I sat in the chair by the window and called my granddaughter, Nancy. Nancy was my late daughter Karen's child. Karen had died in a car accident 6 years earlier, when Nancy was just 16. Nancy was now 22, recently graduated from college, and working as a teacher in San Diego. She was the only member of my family who called me regularly, who seemed genuinely happy to hear from me, who treated me like a person rather than an obligation. "Grandma Betty," she answered on the second ring, and just hearing her voice made me feel less alone. "How's Boston? Are you having a good time with Uncle Matthew's family?" "Actually, sweetheart, that's why I'm calling. Something's happened and I need to tell someone about it." I told Nancy everything. The invitation, the flight, the airport, the photo on Facebook. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, there was a long silence. "Grandma," she said finally, "I am so sorry. I can't believe Uncle Matthew would do something so cruel. I'm trying to understand it myself. You know what? I can't. There's no understanding that level of cruelty. That's not a mistake or a miscommunication. That's deliberate meanness. I keep thinking I must have done something wrong, said something that offended them, or stop," Nancy said firmly. "Whatever problems Uncle Matthew has with you, leaving his elderly mother stranded at an airport is not an acceptable response. That's not how decent people handle family conflicts." "I don't even know what the conflict is, Nancy. I thought we were fine. I thought he wanted me there." "Grandma, can I ask you something? When was the last time Uncle Matthew called you just to see how you were doing? Not because he needed something, not because it was a holiday or your birthday, but just because he wanted to talk to you." I thought about it for a long moment. I honestly can't remember. "When was the last time he visited you in Phoenix?" 3 years ago. And they only stayed 2 days. "When was the last time he included you in a family decision or asked for your advice about something important?" "Nancy, what are you getting at?" "I'm getting at the fact that Uncle Matthew has been treating you badly for a long time, and you've been making excuses for it because he's your son and you love him. But love is supposed to go both ways, Grandma. And I don't think Uncle Matthew loves you the way you deserve to be loved." Her words hit me like a physical blow, partly because they were so harsh and partly because they were so true. I had been making excuses for Matthew's behavior for years, telling myself he was busy, he was stressed, he had his own life to live. I had been so desperate for any connection with him that I had accepted whatever scraps of attention he was willing to give me. What should I do, Nancy? What do you want to do? I want to go home and pretend this never happened. You could do that. Or you could use this as a wake-up call about who your son really is and what kind of relationship you actually have with him. What do you mean? I mean, maybe it's time to stop trying so hard to be part of a family that doesn't want you. Maybe it's time to invest your time and energy and love in people who actually appreciate it.
We talked for another hour, and by the time I hung up, I felt clearer about what had happened and what it meant. This wasn't just about a ruined Thanksgiving. This was about years of being taken for granted, dismissed, and treated as an inconvenience by people who were supposed to love me. The next morning, I woke up early and made a decision. Instead of flying home immediately, I was going to stay in Boston for a few days and do some thinking. I was going to figure out exactly what I wanted my life to look like going forward, and what role Matthew and his family would or wouldn't play in it. I walked to a nearby diner called Murphy's, the same one I'd mentioned in my opening, and ordered breakfast. The waitress, a woman about my age named Helen, was chatty and kind. "You visiting family for the holiday?" she asked as she poured my coffee. "I was supposed to be," I said. "Things didn't work out quite as planned." "I'm sorry to hear that. Family can be complicated." "That's certainly true." Helen brought me scrambled eggs, toast, and a side of bacon that I hadn't ordered. "On the house," she said with a wink. "You looked like you could use a little extra kindness this morning." That small gesture of compassion from a stranger made me cry right there at the diner counter. Not because I was sad, but because it reminded me what genuine kindness looked like. It reminded me that I deserved to be treated with warmth and consideration, not taken for granted and manipulated. After breakfast, I walked around the neighborhood, exploring shops and cafes and getting a feel for the area. It was a nice part of Boston. Tree-lined streets, historic brownstones, small businesses that had been family-owned for generations. I found myself thinking that if I had to be stranded somewhere, this wasn't the worst place to be stranded. Around lunchtime, I stopped at a small bookstore and bought a journal and a pen. Then I went back to my hotel room and started writing down everything I was feeling and thinking, not just about what had happened at the airport, but about my relationship with Matthew going back years. What I discovered as I wrote was that this Thanksgiving betrayal wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of a pattern of behavior that had been building for a long time. Matthew rarely called me unless he needed something. When he did visit, it was always brief and felt obligatory. He never asked about my life, my interests, my health, or my happiness in any meaningful way. He treated me like a burden to be managed rather than a person to be loved. More troubling, I realized that I had been financially supporting his lifestyle in ways that he had come to take for granted. Over the years, I had given him money for house down payments, car purchases, and his children's activities. I had set up college funds for Tommy and Sarah. I have been sending birthday and Christmas gifts that were never acknowledged beyond a brief thank you text. I had been funding a relationship with people who didn't actually want a relationship with me. That evening, I called Nancy again. "How are you feeling today, Grandma?" "Clearer," I said, "and angrier." "Good. You should be angry. What Uncle Matthew did was inexcusable." "Nancy, can I ask you something? Do you think I've been too generous with your uncle over the years?" "What do you mean?" "I mean financially. I've given him quite a bit of money over the years, and I'm starting to wonder if that's the only reason he maintains any relationship with me at all."
There was a pause. Grandma, I hate to say this, but I think that's exactly what's been happening. I think Uncle Matthew keeps you around because you're useful to him financially, but he doesn't actually want you in his life in any meaningful way. So, what was this Thanksgiving invitation about? I have a theory about that. Can I ask you something? Have you given Uncle Matthew any money recently? Not recently, no. He hasn't asked for anything in about 6 months. And have you been talking about changing your will or anything like that? I was quiet for a moment, thinking. Actually, yes. I mentioned to him a few months ago that I was thinking about updating my estate planning. Why? I think the invitation was a test, Grandma. I think they were testing to see how much they can mistreat you and still keep you coming back. I think they wanted to see if you would tolerate being humiliated and still continue to be their financial safety net. That's a horrible thing to think about your own uncle. I know, but it's the only explanation that makes sense. They knew you would spend money you couldn't afford to make that trip. They knew you would be excited and hopeful about being included, and they knew that abandoning you at the airport would be devastating. But they did it anyway, because they wanted to establish that you have no power in this relationship, that you will accept any treatment they give you as long as they throw you occasional crumbs of attention. I felt sick to my stomach, because what Nancy was saying had the ring of truth to it. What do you think I should do? I think you should stop giving them money. I think you should stop chasing after our relationship they don't want. And I think you should start investing your time and energy in people who actually love you. Like who? Like me, for starters. Grandma, I love you so much. I love talking to you. I love hearing about your life. I love having you as part of mine. You're funny and smart and kind, and you deserve to be treated that way. Nancy, I'm serious, Grandma. You've been so focused on trying to win Uncle Matthew's love that you haven't noticed that you already have mine, and probably other people's too if you gave them a chance. That night, I made some phone calls. First, I called my bank and put a hold on the college accounts I had set up for Tommy and Sarah. Then I called my financial advisor and asked him to send me information about changing the beneficiaries on my life insurance and retirement accounts. Finally, I called my lawyer in Phoenix and asked him to start drafting a new will.
Betty, that's a significant change, he said when I told him I wanted to leave everything to Nancy instead of Matthew. Are you sure you want to do this right now, when you're upset? I'm not upset, Carl. I'm clear. For the first time in years, I'm seeing my family situation exactly as it is, instead of how I wish it were. What prompted this change? I told him about the Thanksgiving invitation and what had happened at the airport. Carl was quiet for a long time after I finished. Betty, I've known you for 20 years, and you're one of the most loving and generous people I've ever met. If you're ready to cut your son out of your will, he must have done something truly awful. He showed me exactly how much I matter to him, Carl, and it's not very much. All right, I'll draw up the paperwork. But I want you to think about this for a few days before you sign anything. Make sure this is really what you want to do. I will. But Carl, I'm pretty sure my mind is made up. The next day was Thanksgiving, the actual holiday that I was supposed to be celebrating with my family. Instead, I spent it walking around Boston, visiting museums and historic sites, eating a quiet dinner at Murphy's Diner. Helen was working again, and she seemed pleased to see me. Back again. How was your family dinner? There wasn't one, I said simply. Turns out I wasn't as welcome as I thought. Oh, honey, I'm sorry. That's rough, especially on a holiday. It's actually been liberating, I said, surprising myself with how true that felt. I'm starting to realize that I've been trying to force relationships that weren't meant to be. Well,
You're welcome here anytime. We're open every day except Christmas. And even then, I come in to make sure the coffee's fresh for anyone who needs a warm place to sit. That's very kind of you. Kindness doesn't cost anything, Helen said with a smile. But it's amazing how much it can be worth to someone who needs it. I ordered the turkey dinner special and a slice of apple pie for dessert. While I ate, I thought about what Helen had said about kindness. This stranger had shown me more genuine warmth and consideration in 2 days than my own son had shown me in years. After dinner, I walked back to my hotel and called Nancy. "Happy Thanksgiving, sweetheart." "Happy Thanksgiving, Grandma. How are you holding up?" "Better than expected, actually. I had dinner at a nice little diner, and I've been doing some sightseeing. It's not the holiday I planned, but it's not terrible either." "Have you heard from Uncle Matthew at all?" "Not a word. I don't think he even knows I made the trip." "Are you going to call him?" "No. I'm done chasing after people who don't want to be caught." "Good for you, Grandma. You deserve so much better than the way they've been treating you." "Nancy, I want to tell you something. I've been thinking a lot over the past few days about what I want my life to look like going forward. And I've realized that you're the most important family relationship I have. You're the one who calls me, who seems genuinely interested in my life, who makes me feel valued and loved. Grandma, you are valued and loved by me, absolutely, but I'm sure by other people too." "Maybe. But what I want to tell you is that I'm changing my will. I'm leaving everything to you instead of to Matthew." There was a long silence. "Grandma, are you sure? That's a big decision." "I'm sure. Matthew has made it clear that he doesn't value our relationship. He only contacts me when he needs money, and he's perfectly willing to hurt me for his own entertainment. You, on the other hand, treat me like family, real family. I don't want you to make this decision just because you're angry. I'm not angry anymore, Nancy. I'm clear. I see the situation for what it is, and I'm making decisions based on reality instead of hope. If that's what you want, then I support you. But Grandma, I want you to know that I love you for who you are, not for what you might leave me someday." "I know that, sweetheart. That's exactly why you're the one who deserves to inherit what I've worked for all my life." I stayed in Boston for 2 more days, using the time to explore the city and think about what I wanted my life to look like when I returned to Phoenix. On Saturday morning, I finally received a text message from Matthew. It was brief and unapologetic. "Mom, heard you might have been in town for Thanksgiving. Sorry we missed you. Maybe next time." That was it. No explanation for why I'd been left at the airport. No acknowledgement that he had invited me and then abandoned me. No apology for the time, money, and emotional energy I had wasted on his fake invitation. Just a casual suggestion that maybe we'd connect next time. I stared at that text for a long time, marveling at the callousness of it. He heard I might have been in town? He invited me. He knew exactly when I was arriving and where I would be waiting for him. This wasn't an oversight or a miscommunication. This was gaslighting, an attempt to make me question my own memory and perception of what had happened. I deleted the text without responding. That afternoon, I flew back to Phoenix. As the plane lifted off from Logan Airport, I looked down at the city where I had learned some difficult but important truths about my family. I felt sad about what I had lost, but also hopeful about what I might find when I stopped wasting my energy on people who didn't deserve it. When I got home, there was a message on my answering machine from Nancy. "Hi, Grandma. Just wanted to make sure you got home safely. I've been thinking about our conversation, and I want you to know that I'm planning to visit you for Christmas, if that's okay. I know this has been a hard time, but I love you, and I want to make sure you know you're not alone. Call me when you get this. I called her back immediately.
Nancy, I would love to have you for Christmas. Are you sure you can get the time off work? I'm sure. I've already put in for vacation days. I want to spend some real time with you, not just a quick visit. Maybe a week or so? That sounds wonderful, sweetheart. I'll get the guest room ready. And Grandma, I've been thinking about what you said about wanting your life to look different. Have you thought about maybe moving somewhere closer to people who care about you? I know Phoenix is your home, but if you're feeling isolated there, what are you suggesting? Well, I'm in San Diego, which isn't that far from Phoenix, but there are lots of places in Southern California where you might be happier. Places with more community, more things to do, people your age who might become friends. I haven't thought about moving. This house is paid for, and I know the area. I'm not trying to pressure you, Grandma. I just want you to know that you have options. You don't have to stay somewhere just because you've always been there, especially if it's not making you happy. Over the next few weeks, I found myself thinking a lot about what Nancy had said. Phoenix had never felt like home to me, not really. Harold and I had moved there for his job 30 years earlier, and I had stayed after he died mostly because I didn't know where else to go. But Nancy was right. I wasn't particularly happy there. I didn't have close friends, I didn't have community connections, and the isolation was becoming harder to bear as I got older. Meanwhile, Matthew continued to act as if nothing had happened. He sent his usual store-bought Christmas card with no personal message. He didn't call, didn't visit, didn't acknowledge the Thanksgiving disaster in any way. It was as if he expected me to simply pretend the whole thing never occurred. But I wasn't pretending anymore. I was seeing clearly. In early December, I met with my lawyer to finalize the changes to my will. The new document left my house, my savings, my investments, and all my personal belongings to Nancy. Matthew was mentioned only to the extent necessary to make it clear that his exclusion was intentional, not an oversight. Betty, I have to ask one more time, are you certain this is what you want to do? I've never been more certain of anything in my life, Carl. All right, then let's make it official. I signed the papers and felt a weight I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying lift from my shoulders. For the first time in years, my financial legacy was going to someone who actually loved me and would appreciate the sacrifice and hard work that had gone into building it. Nancy arrived for Christmas on December 22nd, and the moment I saw her at the airport, I felt my heart lift. She looked so much like her mother, my beautiful daughter Karen, who had been taken from us far too young. But Nancy had her own warmth and humor and intelligence that made spending time with her a joy rather than a painful reminder of loss. "Grandma," she said, wrapping me in a hug that felt genuine and enthusiastic, "you look great. How are you feeling?" "Better than I felt in a long time," I said honestly. Nancy had taken 10 days off work, and we spent them really getting to know each other as adults. We cooked together, went shopping, visited local attractions, and talked for hours about everything: her job, her friends, her hopes for the future, my memories of her mother, my thoughts about what I wanted the rest of my life to look like. "Grandma," she said one evening as we were decorating my Christmas tree, "I can't believe Uncle Matthew doesn't make more effort to spend time with you. You're so interesting and funny and wise." His loss. It is his loss, but it's taken me a long time to stop seeing it as mine. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I spent years thinking that if my son didn't want to spend time with me, it must be because I was boring or demanding or somehow not worth knowing. But spending time with you has reminded me that I'm actually pretty good company." "You're the best company, Grandma. I've had more fun this week than I've had in months." On Christmas Eve, we got a phone call from Matthew. I let the answering machine pick it up, and Nancy and I listened as his voice filled my living room. "Hi, Mom, it's Matthew. Just calling to wish you a Merry Christmas. Hope you're doing well."
The kids are asking about their grandmother, so maybe we can plan a visit sometime in the new year. Give me a call when you get this." Nancy looked at me with raised eyebrows. "The kids are asking about their grandmother? Really?" "He says that every few months. It's his way of making me feel guilty for not trying harder to be part of their lives." "Are you going to call him Mac?" "No, I'm done with that dance, Nancy. If Matthew wants to have a relationship with me, he can put in some actual effort. No more fake invitations, no more empty promises, no more using his children as emotional leverage." Good for you. That Christmas was the best I'd had in years. Nancy and I opened presents on Christmas morning. I gave her a beautiful necklace that had belonged to her mother, and she gave me a photo album she'd made with pictures of us together over the years, along with photos of Karen that I hadn't seen before. "Where did you get these?" I asked, tears in my eyes as I looked at pictures of my daughter at Nancy's age. "Nancy has been collecting them from different family members over the years. I wanted you to have copies of all of them." We spent Christmas Day cooking together and watching old movies, and in the evening, Nancy brought up the subject of my potentially moving.
Grandma, I've been looking at some retirement communities in Southern California, and there are some really nice ones. Not nursing homes or anything like that. Active adult communities where people own their own homes but have access to activities and services. You've been researching this? A little bit. I just want you to know what options are available. There's one about an hour north of San Diego that looks particularly nice. It's got a golf course, a community center, organized trips and activities, but the homes are private and people can come and go as they please. That sounds expensive. It would be, but Grandma, you could sell this house and use the equity to buy something smaller there. You might actually come out ahead financially, and you'd be closer to me. I looked around my Phoenix house, the place where Harold and I had lived for 30 decades, where I'd raised my children, where I'd been happiest and saddest and everything in between. It was full of memories, but many of those memories were painful now. And the truth was, I hadn't been particularly happy there since Harold died. "Would you help me look into it?" I asked. "Absolutely. We could drive up there while I'm here and just take a look around. No pressure, just information gathering." I think I'd like that. The next day, we drove to the retirement community Nancy had found online. It was called Sunset Ridge, and it was exactly what she had described. A beautifully maintained community of small homes and condos surrounded by gardens, walking paths, and common areas where residents could gather for activities. We took a tour with a sales representative named Maria, who was about Nancy's age and had a warm, professional manner. "Many of our residents are people who are starting new chapters in their lives," Maria explained as we walked through the community center. "Some are newly retired, some are widowed, some are people who just decided they wanted to try living somewhere different. We have book clubs, painting classes, fitness programs, organized trips to theaters and museums, lots of ways for people to stay active and meet friends." "What about medical care?" I asked. "There's a medical clinic right here on the property with a nurse practitioner and a doctor who comes in several times a week. For anything more serious, we're only 20 minutes from a major hospital, and we have transportation services for people who don't drive or don't want to drive at night." We looked at several available homes, and I found myself genuinely excited about one in particular, a small 2-bedroom cottage with a garden patio and a view of the mountains. It was much smaller than my Phoenix house, but it was also much more manageable and felt cozy rather than empty. "What do you think, Grandma?" Nancy asked as we stood in the cottage's living room. "I think it's lovely," I said honestly, "but it feels like such a big change." "It is a big change, but change isn't always bad, especially when your current situation isn't making you happy. What if I move here and don't like it? What if I can't make friends? What if I'm just as lonely here as I am in Phoenix?" "Those are all possibilities," Nancy said. "But you know what else is a possibility? That you might love it here,
that you might make wonderful friends and have amazing experiences and be happier than you've been in years. On the drive back to Phoenix, I found myself thinking seriously about making the move. Nancy was right. My current life wasn't making me particularly happy. I was isolated, lonely, and spending too much emotional energy on family relationships that weren't fulfilling. Maybe it was time to try something new. Nancy, if I did decide to move to Sunset Ridge, would you really visit me regularly? Grandma, I would visit you every month if you wanted me to, more often if I could manage it, and you could visit me in San Diego whenever you felt like it. We could be real family to each other, not just people who see each other once a year and exchange polite small talk. That sounds wonderful. It could be wonderful, or it could be terrible, but at least it would be different from what you have now. When Nancy left to go back to San Diego, I hugged her tighter and longer than I ever had before. "Thank you," I whispered. "For what?" "For reminding me that I matter. For showing me what it feels like to be really loved by family. For giving me hope that my life can be different. Grandma, you always mattered. Some people just didn't have the sense to see it." Over the next few weeks, I thought constantly about the decision to move. I made lists of pros and cons, talked to my financial advisor about the numbers, and researched everything I could about Sunset Ridge and the surrounding area. In early February, I called Maria at Sunset Ridge and told her I was interested in making an offer on the cottage we had looked at. "That's wonderful, Betty. I think you'll be very happy here. When would you like to move?" "As soon as possible," I said, surprising myself with how decisive I sounded. "I'm ready for a new chapter." The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. I put my Phoenix house on the market, and it sold within 2 weeks to a young family who loved the neighborhood. I sorted through 30 years of belongings, keeping what was meaningful and donating the rest. I arranged for movers, changed my address with all my banks and doctors and service providers, and said goodbye to the few neighbors I'd gotten to know over the years. Mrs. Hernandez was particularly sorry to see me go. "I'm gonna miss you, Betty. You've been a good neighbor." "I'll miss you too, but I think this move is the right thing for me." "What about your son? Is he okay with you moving so far away?" I realized that I hadn't even told Matthew about the move. We hadn't spoken since that brief dismissive text message after Thanksgiving, and I hadn't felt any obligation to keep him informed about my life decisions.
"Matthew will adjust," I said simply. 2 days before the move, I finally called him. "Mom, what a surprise. How are you?" "I'm fine, Matthew. I'm calling to let you know that I'm moving to California this weekend." There was a long pause.
Moving? What do you mean moving?
"I mean, I sold the house and I'm relocating to a retirement community near San Diego."
When did you decide this? Why didn't you discuss it with me?
"I decided it after Thanksgiving, when I realized that my current living situation wasn't making me happy. And I didn't discuss it with you because we don't really have the kind of relationship where we discuss important decisions."
Mom, that's not fair. Of course we have that kind of relationship.
"Do we, Matthew? When was the last time you called me just to see how I was doing? When was the last time you asked for my opinion about anything important in your life? When was the last time you treated me like someone whose thoughts and feelings matter to you?" Another pause. "Mom, I don't know what's brought this on, but what's brought this on is that I spent Thanksgiving alone in a Boston hotel room after you invited me to visit and then abandoned me at the airport."
What are you talking about? You never came to Boston for Thanksgiving.
"Matthew, I have the plane tickets. I have the hotel receipts. I have the text messages where you told me to send you my flight information. Don't pretend this didn't happen."
Mom, I think there might be some confusion.
"There's no confusion.
You invited me, I came, you left me stranded at Logan Airport while you had dinner with your family. I saw the photo on Judith's Facebook page.
There was a very long silence this time. Mom, I can explain.
No, you can't. There's no explanation that makes what you did acceptable. You wanted to hurt me and you succeeded. But you also taught me something important about the kind of person you are and the kind of relationship we actually have.
Mom, please let me.
I'm moving to California, Matthew. My new address will be with Nancy if you ever need to contact me for any legal reason. Otherwise, I think it's best if we don't pretend to have a relationship that neither of us actually wants. Mom, wait. I hung up. 30 seconds later, my phone rang again. I didn't answer. Matthew called 6 more times over the next hour, but I didn't pick up. Finally, he sent a text. Mom, please call me back. We need to talk about this. I deleted the text without responding. The move to Sunset Ridge was everything I had hoped it would be and more. The cottage was perfect for me, cozy, manageable, and surrounded by the most beautiful gardens I'd ever seen. My neighbors were friendly and welcoming, and within the first week, I'd been invited to join a book club, a walking group, and a weekly bridge game. You're going to love it here, said Eunice, a widow about my age, who had moved to Sunset Ridge 2 years earlier. It took me about 6 months to feel really settled, but now I can't imagine living anywhere else.
Were you lonely before you moved here?
I was desperately lonely, she said honestly. My kids live across the country, and I was rattling around in a big house with no one to talk to except the grocery store clerk. Here I have more social interaction than I can handle some days. That sounds wonderful. It is. And the best part is that everyone here chose to be here. We're not people who were forced into retirement homes by their families. We're people who decided to try something new, and that makes for a very different kind of community. Nancy visited for my first weekend in the new place, and I could see how happy she was that I'd made the move.
Grandma, you look different. Lighter somehow.
I feel lighter. I feel like I'm finally living for myself instead of waiting for other people to decide whether I'm worth their time.
I'm so proud of you for taking this leap.
It was scary, but it was also exciting. I haven't felt excited about my life in years. Nancy helped me finish unpacking and decorating the cottage, and by Sunday evening, it really felt like home. We were sitting on my new patio, drinking tea and watching the sunset over the mountains, when my phone rang. It was Matthew. "Are you going to answer it?" Nancy asked. "No. If he has something important to say, he can leave a message." He did leave a message. A long one. "Mom, it's Matthew. I've been trying to reach you for days. Look, I know you're upset about Thanksgiving, and maybe we can talk about what happened, but this move seems really sudden and drastic. I'm worried about you being so far from family, making major life decisions without input from people who care about you. Can you please call me back so we can discuss this like adults?" Nancy and I listened to the message together. "People who care about you," Nancy said, shaking her head. "Where was all this caring when you were sitting alone in Logan Airport?" "He's panicking," I said. "I think he's realizing that he might have pushed me too far." "Are you going to call him back?" "Eventually, but not tonight. Tonight, I just want to enjoy my new home and my time with you." We spent the evening playing cards and talking about Nancy's job and her plans for the future. She was thinking about going back to school to get her master's degree in education, and she wanted my opinion about different programs she was considering. "I value your advice, Grandma. You've lived through so much, and you always have such good insights about people and situations." "Thank you, sweetheart. It means a lot to hear that my opinions matter to someone."
They matter to me. They always have. The next morning, after Nancy left for San Diego, I called Matthew back.
Mom, thank God. I've been so worried about you.
Have you, Matthew? What exactly have you been worried about? I'm worried that you're making major life decisions based on some kind of misunderstanding about what happened at Thanksgiving. I'm worried that you're isolating yourself from your family when what you probably need is more connection, not less. Matthew, there was no misunderstanding about Thanksgiving. You invited me to visit, I flew to Boston, and you left me stranded at the airport while you had dinner without me. Those are facts, not misunderstandings. Mom, the situation was complicated. How was it complicated? Look, Judith had some concerns about having you stay with us, and we were trying to figure out how to handle it, and the timing just got away from us. So instead of calling me to discuss Judith's concerns or to change the plans, you decided to let me fly across the country and then abandon me at the airport? We didn't abandon you, the timing got mixed up. Matthew, I waited for 3 hours. I called both your cell phones and your house phone multiple times. If it was a timing mix-up, you would have gotten those messages and come to get me. Mom, I can't go back and change what happened, but I'm trying to fix it now. How are you trying to fix it? By telling you that you're important to me, that I want you to be part of our family, that moving across the country isn't going to solve whatever problems we're having. What problems do you think we're having, Matthew? I think you feel like I don't call enough or visit enough, and I understand that. I know I've been busy with work and the kids, and maybe I haven't been as good about staying in touch as I should be. When was the last time you called me, Matthew? I called you a few days ago when I found out about the move. Before that, when was the last time you called me before you found out I was moving? There was a long pause. I don't remember exactly. It was Thanksgiving when you invited me to visit. Before that, it was my birthday in September. 2 calls in 6 months, both of them because you wanted something from me. Mom, that's not... Matthew, do you know what I do for my birthday every year? What do you mean? I mean, do you know how I spend my birthday? Do you know if I have friends who celebrate with me? Do you know if I'm lonely or happy or struggling with anything? Mom, do you know what medications I'm taking? Do you know how my health is? Do you know if I'm having financial problems or if I'm worried about anything? Mom, you never tell me these things. I never tell you because you never ask. You call me twice a year, talk for 5 minutes, and then you're too busy to hear about my actual life. I'm asking now. No, Matthew, you're not asking now. You're panicking because you've realized that your financial safety net might be moving away from you. That's not what this is about, isn't it? Matthew, tell me honestly, if I weren't able to help you financially anymore, would you still maintain a relationship with me? Of course I would. Then prove it. I'm not giving you any more money, Matthew, not for emergencies, not for the kids' college, not for anything. If you want a relationship with me, it has to be because you actually want to spend time with me, not because I'm useful to you. Mom, that's not fair. You're punishing me because of one miscommunication. I'm protecting myself from someone who has shown me that I only matter to him when I'm providing something he needs. Matthew, you abandoned me at an airport on Thanksgiving, your own mother. That's not someone who loves me. That's someone who was testing to see how much abuse I would tolerate. Mom, please. I'm done with this conversation, Matthew. If you want to have a relationship with me, here's what that looks like. You call me regularly, not just when you need something. You visit me occasionally, not just when it's convenient for you. You treat me with respect and kindness, not like a burden to be managed. And you never, ever lie to me or manipulate me again. Those seem like reasonable requests. They're not requests, Matthew. They're requirements.
And based on your behavior over the past several years, I don't think you're capable of meeting them. Give me a chance to try. I gave you chances for years. I made excuses for your neglect. I accepted crumbs of attention. I pretended that your fake invitation to Thanksgiving was genuine affection. I'm done giving you chances to hurt me. Mom, I love you. No, Matthew, you don't. You love what I can do for you. You love having a mother who asks for nothing and gives everything. But you don't love me as a person because you don't even know me as a person. That's not true. What's my favorite color, Matthew? What? My favorite color. What is it? Blue? It's purple. It's been purple for 70 years. What's my favorite food? Mom, this is ridiculous. What's my favorite food? I don't know.
I don't know. It's lemon meringue pie, the same dessert I've been making for every family gathering for the past 30 years. What do I do with my time during the week? What are my hobbies? What books do I like to read? What makes me laugh? Mom, you don't know any of these things about me because you've never been interested enough to ask. You love the idea of having a mother who's available when you need her, but you don't love me. I'm trying to change that. Too late, Matthew. I found people who do love me, who are interested in my life, who value my company. I don't need to waste any more time trying to win affection from someone who's already shown me exactly how little I mean to them. I hung up the phone and turned it off. That was the last conversation I had with Matthew for 6 months. During those 6 months, my life in Sunset Ridge became everything I had hoped it would be. I joined the book club and discovered that I loved discussing literature with people who had lived long enough to have real insights about human nature. I started taking a watercolor painting class and found that I had a talent I'd never known about. I joined the walking group and made friends with women who had similar life experiences and shared interests. Most importantly, I stopped waiting for other people to validate my worth. I decorated my cottage exactly the way I wanted it, bought clothes that made me feel good about myself, and filled my calendar with activities that brought me joy. I was busier and happier than I've been in years. Nancy visited every month, sometimes more often. We took trips together, to museums, to the beach, to wine country. We cooked together, shopped together, and talked about everything under the sun. She brought friends to meet me, and I introduced her to my new friends at Sunset Ridge. We built the kind of close, genuine relationship that I had always wanted with family, but had never had with Matthew. In late summer, Nancy brought me some news that wasn't entirely surprising, but was still significant. Grandma, I got a call from Uncle Matthew yesterday. Oh? He wanted to know if you had your address and phone number. He says he's been trying to reach you for months. What did you tell him? I told him that if you weren't responding to his calls, there was probably a good reason for that. But he seemed pretty desperate. He kept saying he needed to talk to you about something important. Did he say what it was? He was vague, but he mentioned something about family financial planning and making sure everyone was on the same page about estate issues. I laughed, though there wasn't much humor in it. So he's finally figured out that he might not be inheriting anything from me. Is that what this is about? Probably. My lawyer sent him a copy of my new will a few weeks ago, as required by law. I imagine that got his attention. How did he react? I don't know. I haven't spoken to him since our conversation when I first moved here, but I imagine he's not happy to discover that his financial safety net has been removed. Are you okay with that? With cutting him off completely? Nancy, I gave Matthew every opportunity to be a real son to me. I was patient, generous, and forgiving for years while he treated me like an inconvenience. The Thanksgiving airport incident was just the final straw in a pattern of behavior that had been going on for a long time. I know. I just want to make sure you're at peace with your decision. I am.
For the first time in years, I'm living for myself instead of trying to win love from people who don't want to give it. And I'm surrounded by people who do love me and want me in their lives. Like you. Like you. Nancy, you've given me more joy and love in the past year than Matthew gave me in the past decade. You call me because you want to talk to me. You visit because you enjoy my company. You ask for my advice because you value my opinion. That's what real family looks like. A few weeks later, I received a registered letter from Matthew. Inside was a 3-page handwritten letter that was part apology, part justification, and part plea for reconsideration. Dear Mom, it began. I know you're angry with me, and I understand why. I've had a lot of time to think about our relationship and the mistakes I've made, and I want to try to make things right between us. I know the Thanksgiving situation was handled badly. Judith was having some anxiety about hosting guests, and we were trying to figure out how to make it work for everyone. And I should have called you to discuss it instead of letting the situation get so confused. I take full responsibility for that miscommunication. I also realize that I haven't been as good about staying in touch as I should have been. Work has been incredibly stressful, and between my job and the kids' activities, I feel like I'm always running behind on everything. But that's not an excuse for neglecting my relationship with you. Mom, I love you, and I want you to be part of our family. I know I haven't always shown that in the best way, but I'm willing to do better. I'd like to come visit you in California so we can talk in person and start rebuilding our relationship. I also want to discuss the changes you've made to your estate planning. I understand that you're upset with me, but I hope you'll reconsider some of those decisions. Not because I feel entitled to an inheritance, but because I think it's important for families to take care of each other across generations. The kids' college expenses are going to be significant, and I was counting on your help to make sure they have the opportunities they deserve. Please call me, Mom. I miss you, and I want to fix this. Love, Matthew. I read the letter twice, then showed it to Nancy when she visited the following weekend. What do you think? I asked after she'd finished reading.
I think it's exactly what I expected, Nancy said. He's not really apologizing for what he did. He's calling it a miscommunication and blaming Judith's anxiety. He's not acknowledging that he deliberately abandoned me at the airport or that he's been treating me badly for years. And he's making it clear that his real concern is the money. That's what I thought, too. Are you going to respond? I think I am, actually, but not in the way he's hoping. I spent the next day writing my own letter to Matthew. It was shorter than his, but it was much more direct. Dear Matthew, I wrote, I received your letter, and I appreciate your effort you put into writing it. However, I don't think you understand the situation as clearly as you believe you do. What happened at Thanksgiving wasn't a miscommunication or a mistake. It was a deliberate act of cruelty. You invited me to visit, knowing I would spend money I couldn't afford on plane tickets and gifts. You knew I would be excited and hopeful about being included in your family celebration. And you knew that abandoning me at the airport would be devastating. You did it anyway. And the only explanation that makes sense is that you wanted to teach me that I have no power in our relationship and that I should be grateful for whatever scraps of attention you choose to give me. You mentioned that Judith was having anxiety about hosting guests. If that were true, the appropriate response would have been to call me before I got on the plane and explain the situation. The fact that you didn't do that tells me that Judith's anxiety was either an excuse or that you used her mental health issues as a reason to be cruel to your mother. You say you want to rebuild our relationship, but your letter makes it clear that your primary concern is the financial impact of my estate planning changes. You mention the kids' college expenses and say you were counting on my help.
This confirms what I've suspected for years, that you maintain a relationship with me primarily because I'm useful to you financially. Matthew, I'm 75 years old. I don't have time to waste on relationships that aren't genuine. I've built a new life here in California, surrounded by people who value my company and treat me with respect. I'm happier than I've been in years, and I'm not willing to go back to begging for affection from someone who has shown me repeatedly that I don't matter to him. If you want to have a relationship with me, here's what that would require. You would need to acknowledge what you really did to me at Thanksgiving without excuses or blame shifting. You would need to take responsibility for years of treating me like an obligation rather than a person you love. You would need to demonstrate through consistent actions over time that you value me for who I am rather than what I can do for you. And you would need to accept that my estate planning decisions are final and that any future relationship between us will not include financial support from me. I don't believe you're capable of meeting these requirements, Matthew, because they would require you to see me as a full human being with feelings and dignity, and I don't think that's how you've ever seen me. I wish you and your family well, but I won't be part of your lives going forward. Love, Mom. I mailed the letter and felt a sense of closure that I hadn't expected. I had said everything I needed to say, and I was finally free from the exhausting cycle of hoping for love that was never going to come. Matthew tried calling several more times over the next few weeks, but I didn't answer. He sent another letter, this one shorter and more desperate, but I didn't respond to that either. Eventually, the calls and letters stopped. Nancy was proud of me for setting such clear boundaries. Grandma, I know that couldn't have been easy, but I think you did exactly the right thing. It was easier than I expected, actually. I think I've been ready to let go of that relationship for a long time. I just needed permission to stop trying. You never needed anyone's permission to protect yourself from people who were hurting you. I needed my own permission, and it took me 75 years to give it to myself. 1 year after my move to Sunset Ridge, I was preparing for Nancy's visit when I got an unexpected phone call. It was from Tommy, Matthew's 8-year-old son, my grandson whom I barely knew. "Grandma Betty?" said a small voice on the other end of the line. "Tommy, is that you, sweetheart?" "Yeah, Dad doesn't know I'm calling you. He found your number in his phone." "Is everything okay?" "I don't know. Dad and Mom have been fighting a lot about money, and they keep talking about you. They say you're mad at us and you don't want to be our grandmother anymore." My heart broke a little hearing that. "Tommy, I'm not mad at you or your sister. I love you both very much. But then why don't you come visit us anymore? Why don't you send us birthday presents?" I closed my eyes, trying to figure out how to explain a complicated adult situation to an 8-year-old. "Tommy, sometimes grown-ups have disagreements that make it hard for them to be around each other. Your dad and I had a disagreement, and we decided it was better if we didn't see each other for a while. But we miss you. I miss you too, sweetheart, but sometimes families change, and people who used to see each other a lot don't see each other as much anymore. Is it because we didn't send you thank you cards for our Christmas presents?" "What do you mean?" "Mom said you sent us presents for Christmas and our birthdays, but we were ungrateful and didn't thank you, so you decided to not be our grandmother anymore."
I realized what had happened. Matthew and Judith had been lying to their children about why I was no longer in their lives. They had told Tommy and Sarah that I had been sending gifts that the children hadn't appreciated,
rather than explaining that I had stopped sending gifts because their father had treated me so badly. Tommy, I haven't sent you any presents because your dad and I haven't been talking to each other, but that doesn't mean I don't love you. Could you maybe start talking to him again? I think he's really sad about it. Tommy, that's not really something you need to worry about. That's between your dad and me. But I heard him crying on the phone with Grandpa Jim yesterday. He said he messed everything up and he doesn't know how to fix it. Grandpa Jim was Matthew's father-in-law, Judith's father. If Matthew was calling him for advice about our situation, he really must be desperate. Tommy, I want you to know that I think about you and your sister a lot, and I hope you're both doing well in school and having fun with your friends. We are. I'm playing soccer now, and Sarah is taking piano lessons. That sounds wonderful. I'm very proud of both of you. Grandma Betty, could I maybe write you letters sometimes, even if Dad doesn't know? That broke my heart completely. Tommy, I would love to get letters from you, but I think it would be better if your dad knew about it. You shouldn't have to keep secrets from your parents. But what if he says no? Then we'll figure something else out when you're older. But for now, I think you should focus on being a kid and let the grown-ups handle the grown-up problems. Okay. But Grandma Betty? Yes, sweetheart? I love you. I love you too, Tommy. So very much. After I hung up, I cried for the first time since moving to California, not because I regretted my decision to cut Matthew out of my life, but because I was heartbroken that two innocent children were being hurt by their father's choices. Nancy found me crying when she arrived for her visit an hour later. "Grandma, what's wrong?" I told her about the phone call with Tommy. "Oh, Grandma, I'm so sorry. That must have been devastating." It was. Those children don't understand why their grandmother disappeared from their lives, and Matthew and Judith are lying to them about what happened. What are you going to do? I don't know. Part of me wants to reach out to Matthew and try to work something out for the kids' sake, but I'm afraid that if I open that door, he'll think he can manipulate me back into the same pattern we had before. You're probably right about that. But I hate the idea of Tommy and Sarah growing up thinking that their grandmother abandoned them because they were ungrateful. Nancy was quiet for a moment, thinking, what if you wrote them each a letter, not to Matthew, but directly to the kids, something they could keep and read when they're older, explaining that you love them and that your absence isn't their fault? Do you think I should do that? I think you should do whatever feels right to you. But if it were me, I'd want my grandchildren to know the truth, even if they couldn't understand it until they were adults. That evening, I sat down and wrote 2 letters, one to Tommy and one to Sarah. I kept them simple but honest, explaining that I loved them very much, but that their father and I had a serious disagreement that made it impossible for us to be around each other. I told them that this had nothing to do with anything they had done, and that I hoped someday, when they were older, we might be able to have a relationship again. I mailed the letters directly to the house, addressed to each child individually. 3 days later, Matthew called me. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up the phone. "Mom," his voice was tight with anger, "you had no right to contact my children directly. I had every right to tell my grandchildren that I love them. You're confusing them. Tommy's been asking questions I don't know how to answer. Try telling him the truth, Matthew." "The truth according to who? You've convinced yourself that I'm some kind of monster, but all I've ever done is try to balance the needs of my immediate family with my obligations to you." "Your obligations to me? Is that what you call a son's relationship with his mother? An obligation?" "That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant, Matthew, and it's exactly how you've treated me for years,
like an obligation to be managed, not a person to be loved. Mom, I've been trying to reach out to you for months. I wrote you that letter, I've called, I've tried to make amends, but you won't even give me a chance. Matthew, do you remember what you wrote in that letter? Of course I do. You called abandoning me at the airport a miscommunication. You blamed Judith's anxiety. You never once acknowledged that what you did was deliberately cruel, and then you spent half the letter talking about how you were counting on my money for the kids' college expenses.